This is Radio Health Journal. I'm Nancy Benson. This week, do you get the winter blues? Here's how to prevent them from coming back next year.
I just thought this was normal. And then when I moved to the sun, I realized, oh my gosh, this is what you're supposed to feel like.
How light therapy can reduce your seasonal depression when Radio Health Journal returns.
I'm Reed Pence, the producer and host of Radio Health Journal. If you like listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
If you only ever read about a violin and had never heard one played, do you have an adequate education in violin?
Finding more opportunities for active learning rather than passive. Then,
if it had not been for Watergate, the horrible mistake he made with Watergate, he would be considered one of our better presidents for what he did with the environment.
We explore the lasting legacies of former presidents. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Radio Health Journal and Viewpoints on your favorite radio station. And subscribe and listen anytime on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Also, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Radio Health Journal.
For a lot of people, winter is a season of holidays and warm drinks by the fire. Families get together, you see loved ones, maybe for the first time all year. But what if you couldn't even get out of bed for the festivities, trapped by nothing more than your mind? That's a reality for many people in the winter months. Seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, can cause mild feelings of the winter blues for some. For others, it's completely debilitating.
Just like any other disease, say diabetes, for example, this disease, seasonal affective disorder, can be a severely disabling disease that causes poor general health, but in addition to potentially damaging, say, my blood vessels or my heart or my brain or my kidneys, just like diabetes does, depression also damages my work, my performance, my resources, as well as my relationships and support system.
That's Dr. Elias Shia, Regional Medical Director for Behavioral Health Services for MedStar Health. He says SAD can occur any time of year, but it's almost always reported during the winter months. It can occur in two forms, the first being as a mild case.
This is sometimes called the winter blues or cabin fever. It's just a milder kind, and in some studies, it shows that maybe up to 10% of the population may experience that every year.
The second, more extreme form of SAD also occurs every year. Those affected feel sluggish and tired, always needing more sleep. In fact, some people think of it as a sleep disorder due to the exhaustion and inability to leave their bed. Shia says this severe form of SAD affects about 1 to 3% of Americans.
Maybe one way to think about the extreme form of SAD as it occurs in nature, especially if I refer to it as a sleep disorder, is to think of bears. Bears hibernate through the winter, and they basically go to sleep all winter long. So that would be an extreme form. Obviously, I'm reaching here. It's a stretch, and I don't want to suggest that this is confirmed as a similar kind of thing or as the same kind of thing, but it's certainly a similar measure of thinking of how we want to just stay in bed, don't want to get out of bed. Think of that extreme that happens with a bear who actually goes into a cave, in fact, stays all winter long.
Shia says SAD seems to have a greater impact in the north. The fall and winter bring shorter days to towns like Chicago, Minneapolis, and Seattle, where Kaylin Adams lives. Less sunlight is a factor that seems to be a driving force of seasonal depression. It's an impact felt by Adams, who recently bought a light to help relieve her symptoms.
It's supposed to help with mood, and I think it does actually help a little bit. The fact that I'm unsure makes me think that it does, because I think if it wasn't working at all, I would say that I was still just as unhappy as always. But I think just having it on in the morning when there is no daylight in the morning, it helps me just kind of wake up. And I think that can be part of the issue with, at least for me, with the seasonal affect, is that it's so dark all the time.
Adams has never sought out a diagnosis for her seasonal depression. However, she feels these effects each year from October through March. Only when the sun comes out and she can feel the heat on her face does her seasonal depression begin to fade.
If there's heat and I can be out in it, even in my winter jacket, I do, and I get my kids outside so that we can have the actual vitamin D from the sun. Normally, pre-pandemic, I was always traveling somewhere, just, a little vacation here or there, go down to California and get some sunshine. And even just like a few days will last me another month.
Before the pandemic restricted travel, Adams hopped on flights throughout the year. She spent her time in Seattle chasing the sun before moving to Arizona. Her new life without gloomy winters exposed a lifelong battle with seasonal depression.
Because I grew up in Seattle and so I didn't know anything different, I just thought this was normal. And then when I moved to the sun, I realized, oh my gosh, this is what you're supposed to feel like. I didn't realize that there was like this change that was happening from summer to winter. And I also just thought that that was normal.
Now back in Seattle, it may be her normal again, but SAD is not a life sentence. Treatments for SAD vary from psychotherapy to medications. But Shaya says one reliable treatment is light therapy, a box that emits 10,000 luxes of light. That's 15 times more light than a brightly lit office. In the morning, users spend a recommended 40 minutes within 18 inches of the light box.
You would be, let's say, reading, or you would be eating breakfast, or you would be putting makeup on, or you would be doing anything in the vicinity of that light, right, where the light is right next to you. But you're going about your business in the meantime, and your eyes or the light is right next to you on the side.
And when it works quickly. Shaya says many users notice a substantial difference in their mood in just a day or two. And though SAD is a treatable disease, prevention is also possible. Shaya says to take a break next to a window or walk outside during the day to increase your sun exposure. Adams takes vitamin D supplements to help recreate the sun's effect during winter, as do her husband and 2 young children. And in the summer,
before I put sunscreen on my kids, I always give them 10 to 15 minutes of vitamin D first from the sun to help them. There's not really a true replacement for the sun. I was vitamin D deficient when I initially checked my vitamin D levels, and that was years after growing up. So I actually was deficient growing up. And then moving to somewhere warm, I made that connection that, oh my gosh, there's way more sun and I feel better. Like I feel happier.
Shaya says there are also other preventive options that you can do from home, like setting a highly scheduled routine for your day. Give yourself motivation to get out of bed and a reason to stay out of bed. He says it's important to regulate sleep so that we're only in bed for 7 to 8 hours, regardless of the quality of rest.
We have an internal clock similar to the sun, and the sun basically rises very predictably every day. And so we are a part of that nature, a part of that natural cycle, and we should try and respond the best way we can to a good daily structure with a predictable cycle, a predictable pattern.
That includes what Shaya describes as a fun menu, a list of activities that you can incorporate into your daily routine. He encourages including family and friends. Fitting 2 or 3 fun tasks in a day can help prevent the recurrence of SAD. Shaya says the disorder can go away on its own, but there's also a chance for it to evolve into a more severe disease. According to a 2018 study, 33 to 44% of patients with SAD develop non-seasonal major depression. So it's important to take steps to prevent or ease the symptoms before they get worse. For more information on seasonal affective disorder, you can visit psychiatry.org. And you can find out more information about Dr. Elias Shaya and all of our guests on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. Our writer-producer this week is Kristen Farah. Our production manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Nancy Benson. Coming up next week on Radio Health Journal.
Perhaps we could transition from pandemic to endemic. That is, a truce that we have with this virus.
Why experts think Omicron could end the pandemic.
Then, how one Colorado school district is combating sleep deprivation for students and parents.
Teachers definitely notice students falling asleep in class. Students themselves notice it, especially in those first couple periods in the morning.
All that and more on Radio Health Journal.
And that's Radio Health Journal for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more. And check Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify for a library of past programs. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and information about our guests at radiohealthjournal.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Radio Health Journal.